today. Oh, there it is. So I guess we'll just keep give a couple of minutes till everyone gets in, and then I'm fine with waiting a little bit longer. That's okay, Monica.
Okay, that will work. So let me, I'm gonna read your bio. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And your last name is pronounced Favela?
Yes.
Alexis Favela is a board certified behavior analyst and a licensed behavior analyst at the Burkhardt Center for Autism Education and Research, and currently attends the Doctoral Philosophy in Special Education graduate program at Texas Tech University. She received her BCBA certificate in November of 2020. Her focus of study is applied behavior analysis, and her area of research focuses primarily on the children and young adults with autism spectrum disorder, which is ASD. So I will hand it over to you now again. Thank you for joining us too and presenting.
Yes, of course. I appreciate it. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Well, actually, let me put it in presenter mode first before I do that. Okay. Oh, now I can't find y'all. Where did you guys go? Okay, so then now. Okay, sorry, I'm having trouble. Can y'all see the screen now?
Yes.
Say welcome.
Yeah, we can, but we can see your next slide as well.
Oh man, that's not what I want to show.
Try that one. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So yes, thank you, Monica, for presenting me. I am Alexis Favela. I am a BCBA who works here at the Burkhardt Center. It's located on Texas Tech campus. But before we get started, if you guys can take a couple of minutes to check in real quick. This is just kind of gives me a little bit more information as to who the audience I'm presenting to, and it really helps us as far as who we're reaching out to in our Lubbock area. So we would really appreciate if you guys checked in. You can either scan that QR code, or actually what I can do is put this link in the chat, so it's a little bit easier, just in case some of y'all who are on your phone can do it through the chat. So let me find the chat screen and put it there. So there is the link as well for you guys to click. Like I said, if you guys don't mind doing that, that would really help me. All right, so can you guys still see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Because actually I'm gonna stop sharing again because it is not showing me what is showing y'all. All righty. So I'm just gonna give a little bit, couple more minutes for you guys to check in. All right, everyone good? Thumbs up. I'm good to go. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So today what I'm going to be talking to you guys is, like Monica mentioned, understanding disruptive behaviors and using preventative strategies just to kind of help alleviate those disruptive behaviors in our home, school, community settings, whatever setting you guys are in, wherever we're coming from. just kind of how to incorporate those preventative strategies with our children.
Alexis, can you
Yes.
change that display settings again? Because we can see
Oh, yeah. Did it switch again?
right there.
There we go.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So yes, I'm Alexis Pavela. So before we go ahead and get started, I do want to go over the agenda today. So we will be talking about what the Burkhardt Center is, all the services we have to offer for our families in the Lubbock community and surrounding areas. Then we'll be discussing the functions of behavior, some, like I said, some preventative strategies on how to decrease those disruptive behaviors. And then if we have time, there is a way we can do guided practice, but if not, I'm open to just kind of opening it up to questions and answers. So you guys have any questions, we can use that time instead so that I can answer those questions. All righty. So what is the Burkhardt Center? So the Burkhardt Center has a lot of opportunities for individuals with autism. We work on a lifespan, so we can work up until the age of 2, up until like they're about 30 years old, just depending on which program they come through. The program that I currently overlook is our Texas Telehealth Outreach Clinic for Autism. It is a research-based grant that allows us to provide parent-implemented interventions with our individuals with autism in the surrounding state of Texas. So we can cover pretty much the entire state of Texas because it is all via telehealth. Because it is a research-based grant, all our services are free of charge. We just have to get your consent to participate. So if you're interested in that and you feel like your family can definitely benefit from the services, I am your go-to person for that, because like I said, I overlook that. Another service that we have for, and that age range is from 3 years up until we've done about 21 years for that, for those services. And so another opportunity that we have is our outpatient services. We provide ABA services, which is applied behavior analysis. Not too sure how familiar you guys are with that. But what that is essentially is we work on any sort of skill acquisition or behavior reductions, or even adaptive skills that may be of your guys' concern. And we can work on that one-on-one with the child coming into the center and actually receiving those services. That service provider, we are going through an insurance provider, which currently we're going through Blue Cross Blue Shield. So if you have a child or you know someone who could benefit from those outpatient services, once again, feel free to reach out to me and we can definitely get you linked up for those services. The other services that we have are our Transition Academy, which is our post-secondary vocational program, which allows for our young adults who transition from high school up into adulthood, who aren't necessarily ready, let's say, for college just yet, but want to learn any sort of independent living skills or vocational skills. They'll come through our Transition Academy program, and we'll teach them all those skills that may be necessary or needing for them to become a little bit more independent into adulthood. We do also partner with internship sites throughout the city of Lubbock, and they have an opportunity to go out to those internship sites with a job coach present to get kind of just feedback on the skills that needs to be performed for them to complete their job related duties. And so that is our Transition Academy. That works with our young adults from ages 18 up until 24, and they do work with TWC as well. Our last program that we do have is our CASE program. That is our program that works with individuals with autism who are students at Texas Tech or South Plains Community College. They will get a job coach, and those job coach just kind of helps them maneuver through college, what college is like as far as academia, or even like just skills that they need to know how to live independently. So CASE really, really helps with that as far as like even how to transfer their IEP goals from high school up into college, and then how to get them the accommodations that is required from them, are required from Texas Tech. So CASE is also a really good opportunity for our young adults who are going through college. And so those are all our programs. I know it's a brief overview, it was very quick. But like I said, if you guys have any questions about any of the services, or if you feel like yourself, your family members, or any sort of individual can benefit from those, I will have my contact info at the end. So definitely reach out to myself, or even just give a call to the center. We can definitely help you guys maneuver to which services may be beneficial for you guys. So that's the Burkhardt Center. So now moving on, so now we're going to go back to our topic that I'm here today to present on, which is understanding disruptive behavior. So we understand that during the summer months, it may be a little bit harder for us to kind of get our children engaged, kind of just how do we, what can we do for them during the summer months while they're not in school, right? What do we do with them, and what can we do to help better their, daily lives? Just things like that, because we understand that summer may not be as routine structured as it usually is for the school semester or during the school semesters. So we understand that there may be some hiccups in our families see during these months, but trust me, I think we're all just all our lives are out of whack during the summer months, because we don't know what day it is, we don't know what time it is, just a lot of things going on. So if there's anything that you can take from today to kind of help alleviate any sort of stress or anything that you can overcome during the summer months, I really hope that that's what I'm here to provide you guys. So one of them may be just kind of understanding disruptive behavior and how to manage that, like I said, in your home setting or out in the community settings. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So what is disruptive behavior, or what's behavior in general? So first, let's identify what disruptive behaviors are. So disruptive behaviors, when you think of disruptive behaviors, you think of crying, yelling, screaming, tantrums, right? And that is behavior, definitely. But let's also look at the positive sides of behavior too. So there's not only disruptive, but there's also desirable behavior, right? So if we want to decrease those disruptive behavior, we also got to look at the desirable behavior. Like, well, what do we want them to do instead, right? Instead of crying, hitting, or screaming, like, what do you want them to do? And so knowing that those desired behaviors are just as important to incorporate or to even teach for individuals, that's also something that we also want to talk about. So we're going to talk about behavior in general, but I will pinpoint throughout the presentation, like, this is what disruptive behavior is, and then this is the desirable, the replacement behavior that we want our children to utilize more, right, on their own. So let's talk about behavior and why is this behavior occurring? So behavior happens for multiple reasons, right? But really understanding the why behind that can be very difficult sometimes. But it's really important to understand what that why is, because that helps us figure out, one, why are they doing this? And then two, what kind of desired behaviors can we find that will match that why function? So like I said, we all behave for a certain reason. There has to be something why we're doing what we're doing, right? It's just not just out of the ordinary, out of the blue, or I don't know, like sometimes, like I just woke up like that. There has to be something that's triggering, right? There has to be that why behind it. So if we really understand that why behind that behavior, we can definitely figure out ways or interventions or strategies on how to alleviate that why, and figure out what really matches that why, so that we can teach them to engage in, this replacement behavior, as opposed to engaging in the behavior that that we tend to see more often. So it's really understand that why. So when we're identifying disruptive behaviors, we always look at, well, what does that behavior look like, right? So when you say disruptive, I can think of multiple things. I already mentioned some of them earlier. Those multiple things that I mentioned earlier was like crying, screaming, hitting, kicking, any sort of tantrum-like behavior that you notice in your children. So really understanding what it looks like, because that will really give us a glimpse of, okay, well, it looks like this. And that really helps us kind of define that term, like I said, that why, like why is it happening? So really understanding what it looks like can really help us in the long run. So what does it look like? Can I see it or can I hear it? So we really want to be objective and measurable with our behaviors, because when you say, I don't know, he was just in a mood today, that really doesn't help anyone, right? Well, what does that mood look like? Or he was just frustrated. Well, what does frustration look like? Frustration looks different for me versus Monica or versus any of y'all, right? So we really want to define behavior that we can all see or that we can all hear, and that it's straight across, all like that we can all do it, or we can all see it straight across, right? So can I see it? Can I hear it? Those really help get those behaviors that are more apparent versus those private events. I'm not saying that private events aren't behavior. Private events definitely are behavior, but they're just a little bit hard to understand. So when we're starting from the very beginning, we really do want to look at those behaviors that we can easily identify by seeing it or hearing it. All right. And then last but not least, like I said, we want behavior that we can measure. So hitting is an easy behavior that we can measure, right? Well, he hit me 10 times. Okay, great. But a tantrum, like when he's in a full-blown tantrum, sometimes hitting may not be measuring, that may not be feasible because there may be multiple times. So do we need to measure as far as duration? Well, how long is it lasting? And so that's one of the things that we really like to ask our families is the duration of things, or like how long it's happening, or the intensity, because that will really tell us and help us identify if that's a disruptive behavior that we need to intervene on, right? Because we know that any 2-year-old, if you take the iPad away from them, they're probably going to cry. But that's typical for any 2-year-old, right? And so we really want to teach our families that sometimes these behaviors are typical or are developmentally, not, I want to say appropriate, but all the peers in that developmental age range are engaging that behavior some way, somehow, right? So what really focuses on the disruptive behavior that we really want to hone in on is kind of this measuring, like if it's happening for too long of a period, or the intensity is just way too much, and it's too severe enough where it's impacting their life, then that's where that comes in, where it tells us, okay, this is a behavior that we need to intervene on immediately, because it is impacting their lives, it's impacting the people surrounding them. It's really, making some sort of impact into their daily lives. And we really that's what we are here for, is to really make sure that we're helping, improve your guys' lifestyle so it's just easier. And so this measurement of this behavior really can help us identify whether or not we're, talking about a behavior that does need to be intervened as soon as possible. And then another thing that the last one, sorry, this is the last point that I want to make is, would someone else identify the exact behavior from this description? So is this behavior easily, is it described and defined in a way that everyone understands what that exact behavior looks like? Yes or no, because that can identify, so whether or not your child is with you, and then your child goes with another person, if you can define that behavior for that other person knows exactly what they're looking for. So we want to make sure that the behavior is defined in a way that anyone can easily understand it by reading just that description. So if you look at 1, 2, and 3, if you help answer those, or if you answer those with full detail, it can definitely be define that behavior that can be easily identified with other people. And it will easily be, other people can understand it better if you really identify that behavior in objectable and measurable terms, right? So after we identify behavior, let's go back to that why. So why? I think my screen is going a little bit crazy. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's my internet connection. I'm sorry. But I think it's back and it's better. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, but you guys can hear me, right? Okay,
We're good.
I'm just gonna keep going. If something happens and you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my camera. But okay, so I really want to go back to that why, like I mentioned earlier. So like I said, disruptive behavior can be a form of communication, right? Like for most of our kiddos who we do have that social communication deficit, if we look back at the DSM criteria, especially I'm going to focus more on autism. So if you will look at the DSM criteria for autism, that social communication is a deficit, right? So our children already have this communication deficit, and their way of communicating with others may be a disruptive behavior, right? And so if you look at this meme that says, so let me get this straight, I don't have to cry and yell to get my cookie. So really teaching them that, you know what, yeah, but like you don't have to cry, you don't have to hit, you don't have to scream to get this cookie. But really that seems very obvious, you know, for someone who's typical, but for or neurotypical, but for our individuals who do have that social communication deficit, it may not be as obvious to them. So we really need to teach them, you know, that communication of requesting for things using their words, instead of engaging in this disruptive behavior. So if we're looking at communication, I do want to tell you that that disruptive behavior could in fact be some form of communication, like they're trying to communicate something to you guys, they just don't know how. And so that's what we're here is trying to figure out how we can get them to communicate their wants and needs instead of engaging in that disruptive behavior. All right, so as I'm going in this tangent about behavior, I also want to include that there are functions of that behavior. So that why behind everything. Why are they engaging in this behavior? Well, let me tell you, there's probably 4 reasons as to why they may be engaging in this behavior. The first function that I'm going to go over is escape, which also has an AK of avoidance, right? So they're engaging in a behavior to escape some sort of aversion, stimuli. They're escaping, you know, homework tasks. You know, you have our kiddos who, you know, tear up their paper, run out of the room as soon as you present a homework, right? So they're trying to escape actually doing that homework assignment, right? Or maybe they just won't walk in the room entirely. As soon as they see that homework put down on that table, they're just gonna be like, nope, I'm gonna avoid that room. I'm not going in there. So they're avoiding it entirely, right? So one of the functions is escape, avoid. So we really have to figure out what the function is so that we can find a replacement behavior that is equivalent to that function. So if it's an escape avoidance function, we have to make sure that we're keeping that in our mind, like he's behaving or she's behaving in a way for them to escape or to avoid doing something. So what can we teach them instead? And I'll go into that later in this presentation. But I really want you guys to focus on these functions because these functions are really imperative to understand which replacement behavior we're going to be teaching our students based off of the functions that they're engaging in these behaviors. All right, so our second function is tangible, which also has an AKA of access. So it's our individuals who behave in a way to get access to anything in their environment, whether that be access to their iPad, access to edibles, access to any sort of activity, or access to something. They're just behaving in a way to get access to that certain stimuli. I always like to teach our parents that these are kiddos that cry and complain to get access to their iPad, right? And as soon as they have their iPad, they are happy-go-lucky. They, you know, their mood changed from, you know, this to this immediately as soon as they get their iPad because they are fine because they have what they wanted, right? And they learned if I cry and I scream for long periods of time, I'm going to get what I want eventually, right? Like eventually they're going to give in and they're going to give me what I want. So I'm going to cry and scream here until I get my iPad, right? Or even just thinking about it like at a grocery store. If you're at a grocery store with your child and they start to cry because they want that candy bar, you'll easily give in, right? Because you're like, oh my goodness, I don't want my child here crying for long periods of time in a grocery store in front of like all these strangers. So I'm going to give him that candy bar. So you'll see a lot of tangible, especially with our younger ones, but I'm not saying that it just stops at our younger ones. I'm definitely a tangible function. So if you tell me I'm working for some sort of like crumble cookie, I will do anything I can to get that crumble cookie. But we also all work for something. Think about like our paychecks. We all work, you know, to get our paycheck at the end of the month or every 2 weeks, however, or at the end of the day, right? So we're all working towards something. So we all kind of have that tangible function in us. Alrighty, so our next function is sensory, which also has an AK for automatic. Sensory is just our individuals who will behave in a way that is not mediated by anyone else, just on their own. So if you put them in a room alone, they're going to behave in these behaviors all on their own. So if you think our feet tapping, so individuals who tap their feet, or a hand flap, or walking back and forth, or spin around, they're behaving in those because they like the sensory output that they get from that. Right. So like I said, if you go back to the DSM-5 criteria of autism, that they are individuals with autism have a sensitivity to sensory stimuli. So whether that's output or input, if they're hypo or hyperactivity to these sensory inputs, there is that, that sensitivity to it. So our individuals will behave in a way to get that sensory, output from it. So I know that our kiddos, like I know specifically our kiddos like to like line up the cars and like look at an eye view because they like the way it looks from that perspective. Or if they grab like a pen, they'll just be, flickering back and forth because they like the way it feels. I know we all also not all of us, I don't know, but I know I definitely have some sort of sensory. So if you give me a pen, I'm just gonna be tapping that pen for as long as I have it. So we all kind of have some sort of sensory behavior, right? Sometimes it's just to a little bit of an extreme where it may impact, their daily life, and it may kind of separate them from the rest, just depending on the severity of that sensory behavior that they're showing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So my daughter, my daughter's autistic,
Okay.
but her sensory is more towards food.
Okay. She's sensory, like sensitive to the texture of food, or she will just put everything? Okay. It's the texture of it?
Texture.
Yes. Okay. That is definitely something that I'm gonna say you're not the only parent who has that issue. That is definitely something that we see a lot of, is that texture food. I know I'm a very picky eater because I also don't like texture. Like it took me forever to eat an oyster because I just did not like the way the oyster felt in my mouth, which is fine. But there are feeding programs to help with that. So if that's something that you're definitely concerned about, I would definitely seek out feeding therapy. Like if it's impacting your daughter's life, like any sort of health, if you see any sort of health concerns, and if that's something that you definitely want to seek out more information and get more consultation services on, then feeding therapy can be one way to help with that.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you hopping in. So if any of y'all have questions, just do the same thing like she did. Just kind of hop in and I'll definitely answer the questions. Okay. But yes, texture is one of them. With a lot of them, not just on foods, in their clothes as well. So there are like clothing lines that are specific for individuals with autism that don't have like the tags on them, or the hems are a little bit more set, things like that, or shoes. I know a lot of our kiddos, as soon as like they get somewhere, they will take off their shoes. I don't know what it is. They just don't like having shoes on or socks on. Yeah. So that's definitely something we see, but we like to teach it. Some of those things we like to tell our families, like, okay, but is that okay for them? Like, is it okay for them to take off their shoes? Like, does that really, bother you? Does that impact you? So we really like to figure out the significance first of that problem before we do any sort of intervention. So that's when I said, if you do see some sort of health problems with your daughter's sensitivity to foods, then maybe you should seek out. But if you feel like, she's still living fine, she's still doing great.
She's doing great. It's just some of the texture. She just won't eat it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we ask her, what are you hungry for? And a lot of parents, they think I'm crazy because I asked my 6-year-old, what do you want for supper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so I understand that, I love how you're giving her choices, giving her a say into things. But like I said, if that's something that you kind of just want a little bit more help in, I would definitely, I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you exactly what to do because I haven't seen it. But I would definitely, if that's something that you are of interest in, or like it is a concern and you kind of just want to work on it, feeding therapy is helpful. ABA can also work on feeding therapy, but you can definitely reach out for anything like that, and they can definitely help.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Alrighty, and then our last function is attention function. So these are individuals who behave in a way to get attention from anyone. So I like to say, if you think of like classroom settings, you think of your class clowns, right? They're behaving in a way so that they can get attention from all their peers because they love that attention that they're getting, you know, like their laughs, the giggles, you know, things like that. So individuals who behave in a way to get attention. So they'll do anything for that peer's attention or for anyone's attention in their environment. So these are the four main functions of behavior. And I'm going to sit here and say that you can't just like, you can have one or you can have a multiple of one. So I know, like I said, for myself, I've already tried to figure out and evaluate myself. I'm definitely an escape function and a tangible function. So like I said, I will work for, if you tell me there's crumble cookies downstairs, I will do anything to get a crumble cookie. Or I will do anything to get out of any sort of situation that requires, you know, like the spotlight. I do not like the spotlight on me. So I will do anything to avoid that entirely. So like I said, your children could possibly behave in ways that serves multiple functions. So we really got to pay attention as to why like what the function is and why are they doing that. And that will come, I'll explain to you a little bit more as to how to figure out what function your child is behaving in right now. But I do want you guys to keep in mind of these functions of behavior. Alrighty. So moving forward, so let's figure out that why. I do have two examples on here that we're going to go over together so you guys can understand what that looks like. So the first example, so let's look at this first example and let's figure out what's happening before that behavior occurs, and then what's happening after. So it's important to understand what's happening before it, because that will kind of tell us exactly like what is triggering this behavior from happening, or triggering this behavior for happening. Like, why are they doing this, right? So that's where why is going to come in. So that's where we call our antecedent. Our antecedent comes right before the behavior. So what is going on right before that, right? And then what is happening after that? So what kind of consequences happening after that, whether that's a reprimand, whether that's praise, whether that's social attention, that could be multiple things. Just figuring out what exactly is happening right after that, because that can also tell us like, well, as soon as they cry, they get the iPad, and then, or let's say you restrict the iPad, then they start to cry, and then you give them the iPad back so that they can stop crying. Well, they've already learned, if I just keep crying, I'm gonna get access to this iPad, right? So that's the maintaining consequence. And that's what's telling them to continue behaving in this behavior, because they already know the consequence that's gonna come, whether that's positive consequence or negative consequence, right? They know that if they behave in a certain way, they're gonna get access to some sort of consequence that's maintaining that. So if you think about the future, they're gonna continue doing it because they already learned, if I continue to cry when mom takes away my iPad, she's going to give it right back to me, right? So we really want to know what's happening right before and then what's happening right after they engage in this behavior. So let's look at the first example. So they're sitting all by themselves, right? No one else is around them, and then they just go around and they hit the staff member, right? And then the staff member tells them not to hit and to calm down. So let's look at this example. Look at the antecedent. They're sitting all by themselves, right? They're getting no sort of attention from anyone. They aren't engaging with anyone. And then all of a sudden, they just go and hit a staff member. And then the staff member comes and tells them, oh, we don't hit, you need to calm down, something like that, right? Even though it sounds like a negative reprimand, they're still giving that student attention. So if we look at the function of this behavior, we're gonna say that it is attention, right? Because they're sitting all by themselves. Look at the beginning part. They were all by themselves, then they just randomly come and hit the staff member. The staff member tells them not to hit, but that's still some sort of attention that they're getting from that staff member, right? So that's one example of an attention function. Do I have questions about that example? All righty, so I'm gonna move on to the second example. So we're cleaning up materials, right? And then the individual throws items on the ground, right? So let's say they told them, okay, it's time to clean up. Then the individual just grabs items and throws it on the ground, and then the staff tells them to stop and tells them to clean up and starts cleaning up the materials for them, right? Like, oh, we don't do that. Remember, we got to continue cleaning, and then cleans up for them, right? So then they get out of cleaning entirely because, you know, staff members is doing it for them essentially. So if you look at this example, we would say they're escaping, right? Because they know it's time to clean up. They throw it on the ground, they're going to get in trouble, and then the staff member is just going to do it for them. So they escaped, or they avoided cleaning up entirely because they just threw that item on the ground, and they learned, hey, if I just do this, I get out of it, right? So they're escaping or avoiding cleaning up, right? So those are those two examples of attention and escape. Do we have questions about the examples? I do have other examples to go into all four functions, but these are two ones that I think are most common and most frequent. So I definitely wanted to go over this. And then I do also have on the bottom a little red square, and it says the verbal behavior approach. Well, that's what that stands for. And it says pages 31 to 34, which you guys are going to get access to this. So for attending this boot camp, if you guys checked in the very beginning and you put your mailing address, I will be sending you guys out some resources. And this is one of the resources. So it's a book. It's called The Verbal Behavior Approach. And it goes a little bit more into depth about the functions of behavior and, you know, the before, looking for the before the behavior, the after behavior, tying it back into the function, and then what can we do from there? All right.
Examples for the other two behaviors. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to say for those that got here a little bit later, I re-added the link so you can register and add your address if you want the resources.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Monica, for doing that. And yes, Macy, go ahead and continue.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
The other two examples.
Yes, yeah. So we'll go into the other two examples right now. I just want to kind of give you guys a brief introduction on how to figure out these two, and then I'll go into the other ones.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. So I also want to pin out before we move on that, okay, there we go. So I also want to pin out that the behaviors can look the same, but they can serve different functions. So that's also very important. So kicking and spitting, right? But they can be kicking and spitting to escape something, or they can be kicking and spitting to get attention. So this is also really important. And so this is where your antecedent will come in and help you understand that function. So he's kicking and spitting, but what happened right before? Did you present a homework assignment that's a little bit hard or difficult for them to complete? And if you say, well, yes, I presented this homework assignment, then they started kicking and spitting, then that can kind of tell you, and then you took the homework assignment away, that can kind of tell you, okay, it's because he was escaping that, doing that homework assignment, right? But then let's say you ask, okay, why did he start kicking and spitting? And you said, oh, well, it's because I was over here working with another student or working with my other child. And then he just randomly started kicking and spitting, right? And then what did you do after that? Oh, well, I told him to stop. Okay, well, I can tell you, well, it's because you were restricting that attention from him initially because you were working with the other child or the other student. So then he started kicking and spitting to get your attention. And then you gave him the attention, whether that was a reprimand, you still provided him attention. So behaviors can look the exact same, but they can serve different functions. So that's why I said it's really important to analyze what's happening right before the behavior and what's happening after to figure out what function that is. All righty. And so then if we want to intervene on these behaviors, the behavior intervention should have a replacement behavior, right? So you're taking out the old behavior. I'm taking out that kicking and spitting, and I want to put in the new one. I want to teach them to request for help or to request for my attention, right? Instead of kicking and spitting. Okay, great. But we got to make sure that that replacement behavior is functionally equivalent to that old behavior. So is it serving the same function for that individual? Because if it's not, then that individual is still going to engage in that same old function of behavior because they're not getting what they're wanting out of it. So that's why it's important when you take out the old behavior and put in the new one, they both have to be functionally equivalent. They're both getting the same output for that individual. All righty. And so this is where I said we're going to go into the other examples. So this is a great little map to really understand what this may look like. So I'm going to go over this. Like I said, I'm going to do it for all 4 functions. So at any point, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me and we can definitely discuss it a little bit more if you guys are unsure a little bit or need more clarification, okay? So we're going to start to the very left, which says setting event. So setting event can be anything that happened in that individual's environment or their life or that day that can impact really their behavior. So if you think of, when you think of setting events, we think of like lack of sleep or their hunger or their routines thrown off or they didn't go to school or anything that was just out of the ordinary that doesn't typically happen in that individual's daily life that really can have an impact on their behavior. So setting events are also important because that can tell you whether or not, you know, something may just be a little bit off, meaning the child may be off. I know we all have off days. This past weekend was a little bit of an off days, like both of them, Saturday and Sunday were a little bit of off days for me. So I really didn't do much over the weekend because there was just a lot going on. So we really got to make sure we're also looking at this with our individuals when we're thinking about behavior, because these events can definitely impact how they're doing, what they're doing, and things like that. And it's definitely important for you to hone in on that. So like I said, when I had an off day the last 2 days, I really didn't do much. So I didn't push myself to do anything. So when your child's having an off day, maybe that's not a good time to, you know, practice or to, you know, do any sort of interventions, or maybe you guys just need to cut back a little slack on this day, just a little, because like I said, we all have those off days and it's okay to have that. But it's also important to understand when they have those off days to know if today is a good day to practice or today may not be a good day to practice, right? With any sort of replacement behavior that you want to bring in or any sort of interventions you want to bring into your household. So those are setting events. And then, like I said, antecedents is what happens right before the behavior. So what is triggering that behavior? And then you go into your disruptive behavior. So what that behavior looks like, and then what is the consequence when they engage in that behavior. And then did we figure out the function, the why? So why did they engage in this behavior? So of course we want to find that replacement behavior that matches that why. And then we want to find a consequence for that replacement behavior, right? Because if we find a desirable behavior that doesn't match the why, like I said, you probably won't see some sort of improvement because you're not matching that why. They're still not getting that same equivalence as to that disruptive behavior. So they're probably still going to engage in that disruptive behavior if that desirable behavior doesn't get them what they want. All righty. So let's look at an example. So the parent has been at work all day long, right? So the child and the parent haven't been together all day. The parent's been at work. Let's say the child's kind of been alone or been with someone else, but hasn't really gotten this parent's attention all day because the parent's been at work. So then the parent comes home and starts preparing dinner, okay? Which is very typical in our life, right? We get home, we start dinner. Then the child starts to yell, throws himself to the floor, and you're just like, what? Like he's just, you know, starts doing all these behaviors when the parent's preparing dinner. So then the parent tells him, you know, to stop, or the parent actually stops making dinner and attends to the child and probably says like, hey, stop doing that, don't do that, what's wrong, something, right? So if you look at this, we would all hypothesize that it's probably because lack of attention. So that's the function, right? Is that attention piece, because the parent has been at work all day, the child hasn't seen the parent, then the parent gets straight home from work and starts preparing dinner, and the child, starts to cry. I am going to stop my video for a little bit because it's getting a little bit bad. I'm sorry. Oh, now my video doesn't want to work. I think it's my Zoom account. I apologize. I'm just going to keep talking though for the time's sake and time being, like this. But if I can bring it back, I will later on. Alrighty. So then we're saying that the function of this behavior is attention, right? So if we think about it, and what we would typically want is we would typically want our child to, oh, there it is. We would typically want our child to play independently, right? While we're cooking dinner, I want my child to play by himself, right? But that's not matching the child's function, which is the child's function's attention. So if the child's playing by himself, is he getting the attention from you? No, right? So that's not functionally equivalent, right? Macy, did you have a question?
Yes, you would get the child involved in helping you cook.
Yes,
So
exactly.
they have that attention that they need. You don't just say, just go to your room, get out of here.
Exactly. Hi. So you hit it. You hit it right on the bullseye. That's exactly what I was going to go into next. So we're looking at, so the replacement behavior, instead of the child yelling and screaming, what's something you'd want your child to do instead is ask the parent to play, right? Like asking mom and dad, hey, can we play? That's a replacement behavior you would want your child to engage in, right? And so then the consequence from them asking, you would say, of course, but I got to prepare dinner, so let's do it together, right? So let's cook dinner together, and they're receiving that attention from you while helping you cook dinner. So then you are serving that function, that attention function, you are serving it that way. Do you guys have questions about this? So Macy, like I said, you were right on track. You hit it right on the bullseye. Is you would have them get involved with preparing dinner because that's giving them that attention and also, a little bit more engaging for them. All right, questions about this example? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move on to the next example. So it's the end of the day, right? And the parent says, pick up your shoes. And the child starts to yell and throws himself to the floor. So if you see from the other example, it's the same behaviors, right? So he yells and he throws himself to the floor when mom says, pick up your shoes, or dad says, pick up your shoes. And then the child is placed in timeout and parents picks up the shoes for them. You know what? Go to your room, you're in timeout, I got this. Picks up the shoes for them, right? So if you think about the function, they escaped or they avoided picking up their shoes entirely, right? Because, they got out of it. They started yelling and screaming, and mom or dad said, you know what, you're in timeout, go to your room, I got this. And they picked up the shoes for them. All right. So if you think about it, what you would typically want our child to do when you ask them to pick up the shoes is pick up the shoes, right? But is that serving that function of escape? Nope, it is not, because they don't want to do it at all, right? They're trying to escape, avoid it entirely. So that's not serving that same function. So what we would want them to do, what we would teach them to do is ask for help, right? Ask, hey mom, well, can you help me pick up the shoes? Maybe that will help them a little bit better and get them a little bit more engaged in this non-preferred task. If you teach them to ask, then you say, of course, and you help them complete the task together. So then that's a win-win situation. You get them to pick up the shoes and they picked up their shoes and they got a little bit more support in that task completion. And that served that same function of escape. So for escape and avoid kiddos, you definitely want to teach them like how to ask for help, how to ask for breaks, things like that, so that you can reduce that frustration of them engaging in that non-preferred task, right? So this is an escape function. Example questions on this one. All right, so let's go ahead and move to the next one. So the child is sick, all right? And then the parent turns off the TV, and the child starts to cry and hits his parent because he turned off that TV. Then the parent turns it back on, like, okay, I'm sorry, turns the TV back on. All right, so we all can all agree that the function is probably tangible, right? Like he's wanting more TV time, he or she's wanting more TV time, and you turned it off. So what you would, in a, like I said, like in a typical situation, you would want the child to play with something else, right? Well, I turn off the TV, I would want him to go play with something else, right? Typically, that's what we would want him to do, find an alternative. Yes, I agree, but finding that alternative doesn't get him access to what he was originally wanting. So you're not going to see that behavior decrease if it's not matching that function. So then what you would teach him instead is ask to turn back the TV on, right? Like just ask me for more TV time. Then you can have more TV time, and then the parent turns it on, right? As long as you ask instead of crying and hitting. So if you teach them to ask for more TV time, that's serving that function of tangible. They're wanting access to more TV time, so they ask for it. That's serving that same function, and you'll see that behavior decrease of them crying and hitting you. So that's serving that function. Questions on this one? Did this one help you, Macy, a little bit more? Yes? Okay, perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, I'm gonna go into the next function. Any other questions you guys may have?
So Alexis,
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask, so what we're trying to do is teach the child how to ask for something, right? Instead of screaming and yelling?
yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So we're trying to find that replacement behavior of asking for more time, which is, if you think about it, it's very typical. Most of our neurotypical kids can ask like, wait, can I just have one more minute on the iPad? Can I just have one more turn, right? So those compromising skills are very important to teach our individuals, especially our individuals with that communication deficit. So you really have to explicitly teach them that. If you want more time with TV, you can ask for more time. If you want, one more turn with a game, you can ask for one more turn with the game. And then, because that's more appropriate than them crying and hitting you. So I would definitely honor that.
So it's okay to ask the child, say if they're screaming and yelling, and we can ask them, okay, what can you do instead, right?
Yeah, so so if it's definitely access to that TV time, if like, oh, I turned it off and he started crying and screaming, is this my opportunity to get them to ask for more time? Definitely, I would, kind of get that communication for them to request for more TV time. If you know
Okay.
that's what it is, yes. Because if that's not what it is, then they're probably not going to do it. But if you know for sure, like it's because they want this iPad or they want this TV on, then definitely tell them if you want more time with the TV, you can ask for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is that tangible function. And this one's easily to pick up on because, like I said, if you have that antecedent of I restricted access to this iPad, or I turned off the TV, or I put the board game up and they started crying, it's because as soon as I did that, they started crying, then that can really tie it into, oh, it's because they want more time with it, or they didn't want you to restrict it. So definitely you can go in and teach them how to ask to turn it back on, or how to ask for more time on the iPad, or ask for one more turn with the board game or the toy. All righty. And so let's look at our last function. So our last function is, okay. So there's really not much going on. No really exciting events. It's a good day. Perfect. So the child is sitting at the dinner table during mealtime, and the child bangs silverware on the plates while at the table. So he's just banging the silverware on the plates, which kind of could be a little annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Right? And so he's banging the silverware on the table. Because the child received that auditory input from the banging, he or she likes the way it sounds, likes the way it feels, like the little anything. They just like what they're getting out of banging that silverware on the plates. So if you think about it, that function is probably sensory output. They love the way it feels, maybe by the vibration of it or the sound of it, something. They like the way it is, so they're going to continue doing it, right? What you would typically want your child to do is only use the utensils to eat, right? Typically, that's what you would want them to do. But, that's not going to serve that sensory function. They still have that sensory output that they need to get out. That they use the utensils to eat, they're not serving that sensory function, right? So what you would have them do is play with some sort of designated toy instead that can serve that same output. That still kind of, it doesn't have to sound the same or, vibrate the same, but they can still get that sensory output with this designated toy instead, right? So then they receive that auditory sensory input from that designated toy. So if you can give them something to play with instead of the silverware, I would definitely do that because they're receiving that sensory output. All righty, questions about this example? Okay, this one may be a little bit trickier, I'm not gonna lie, because finding some sort of alternative toy, alternative fidget or something that serves the same function may be a little harder. So you really have to play with this one so that you see, okay, instead of him biting himself, he's biting on this chewy toy, or instead of banging the silverware, he's banging now this, little fidget that I got him instead, or, playing with those dice, those like little fidget dice instead that has him like clicking, so this one's a little bit trickier. But as long as you play with different fidgets and gadgets and things like that to find that sensory output for them, you can see an improvement with your child. Like I said, it may be a little bit harder to get there for this one. All righty. So now that we've talked about functions, let's talk about antecedent-based interventions. What that is proactive or preventative strategies that we can do that can help alleviate any sort of the behaviors that we're seeing. All right. So antecedent-based interventions, let me go ahead and put it. So it is one of the 27 interventions that are classified as evidence-based practices. What this means is that there has been intensive research that is considered high quality research that's shown to improve student outcomes. So antecedent-based interventions have shown outcomes through intensive research. They are a set of interventions that can be used to decrease an identified interfering behavior and increase engagement by modifying the environment. So these interventions, we're getting ahead of the behavior entirely, right? So we're looking at that antecedent part of it. So what can we do before the occurrence of that interfering behavior? So that's what these strategies are used for. All right, and it is used to reduce the occurrence of that interfering behavior from occurring at all. So like I said, we're looking at what can we do before that behavior occurs at all. All right. So some goals that ABIs can address are, it can address adaptive behavior like eating food, cleaning, chores, homework assignments, things like that. It can reduce those interfering behaviors. And it can improve transitions if transition's really hard. It can increase communication. So I know today we've been talking a lot about communication, having them request for more time, more things like that. It can help increase communication as well. It can increase their engagement with preferred and non-preferred activities, any sort of engagement, it can help increase that. And then, like I said, it can also enhance academic performance. So if you're needing them to complete any sort of homework assignments, ABIs are definitely a good tool to utilize to help increase those performances. All right, so some common ABIs to include. So this, we're just going to dig a little bit more deeper and figure out some of the most common ones that we can typically use in our everyday lives. So using the child's preferences, this is the big one. So incorporating their highly preferred items or activities within the non-preferred activities. What that means essentially is, I'll show examples after this, but what that means is, let's say your child loves SpongeBob, right? SpongeBob is their go-to. So what you can do is incorporate SpongeBob characters into a reading assignment of some sort, right? To make it a little bit more engaging for them. All right. Another strategy to use is changing your child's schedules and or routines by using visual supports to help them cope with this change. So I understand that change is a little bit harder for individuals, but if we can if we can include any sort of visual supports to help them cope with that change, that would definitely help. So like your routine's a little bit thrown off today, so let's get a visual schedule and let's figure out what's changed and then in what order do we want to do it in. So giving them those visual supports to cope with that change will definitely help. I know a lot of our families like to use like morning schedules, daily schedules, or nighttime schedules at home. So having those separate schedules can help. But like I said, we understand that it may not be the same every single day. So kind of sitting with them and letting them know, like today we're not gonna be able to do this, but this is what our schedule looks like today, and really talking it with them out and telling them exactly what's changed so that they can cope with that, ask questions, give them some sort of, I guess, stress reduce because of that change happening, right? And then implementing pre-activity interventions like priming, which is also known as warning them about a transition coming up. So if you can warn them ahead of time, I would definitely do that. Using visual schedules again, and then review the expectations with them first before requiring them to complete the activity so that they understand what is expected of them and can ask questions. Use first then language. So this goes really far for individuals. So having them like, first, we're going to do the hard assignment or the non-preferred, and then you get access to whatever you want, that reward, right? So using that first then language can definitely help, especially with those difficult tasks or those non-preferred tasks. Like if you really need them to get chores done, all right, well then first we're going to do chores and then you get ice cream, or first we're going to do homework and then you get to play outside. All right. Another strategy to use is allowing them to make choices. So you can incorporate choice making with the order of tasks that they must complete, where they can work, whether that's being at the dinner table, in their room, or what materials to use, whether that's like crayons or markers, giving them that choice, or what reinforcers to engage with during their break. So we're going to get this homework assignment done, and then you get a quick break. What do you want to work? What do you want to work for? And giving them a choice board. I am going to say that also in your guys's bags that I'm going to send out to you, you guys are getting a choice board as well. And then that choice board, you can definitely use that. So giving them choices on what they can, just choice making. That gives them kind of some sort of feeling that they have a voice as to what they're doing, right? So it gives them a voice as to what they're receiving or what they're doing or how they're completing things or what order. So choice making can really go a long way for individuals. And then changing how the instruction is delivered. So that's by environmental support. So whether that means you're modifying the material. So, he doesn't do well with crayons, but he does well with markers or pencils. All right, let's change out those crayons then. Or breaking down the task into smaller steps. So telling the kiddo to go clean his room may be too complex of a demand or too complex of a task. So do you need to break that up into make your bed, then put your clothes away, then your shoes away, then your toys away, like really breaking that clean up your room down into the smaller steps can definitely help them. Right. And then using any sort of adult or peer support. So if they need assistance, providing that assistance, as long as they're completing the task, why not be there to support them, right? Model to them first. So if they are doing a task that's new for them that they haven't done in the past, model to them first how to complete that task and then have them do it. And then visual support. So if you need, let's say you break down that task into smaller steps and they need those steps written down, write those steps down for them so that they know exactly what steps they need to do to complete that task to reach your guys' expectations. So any sort of visual supports on how the instructions delivered can also help. And it can also decrease that frustration that you may see. Then lastly, enriching the environment with sensory stimuli. So having therapy balls, foam blocks, silly putties, squishy balls, or rocking chairs easily available for them to engage with this in their environment. This allows them to have free and continuous access to these items. And then once you begin to see like that, those interfering behaviors decrease or that sensory stimuli to decrease over time, then you can also begin to remove these items from their environment, because I also know that that's not really feasible to have these available at all times, or they may not have access to it all the time. So I would definitely at first enrich them with all the sensory stimuli, then slowly as time progresses, kind of taking them out a little bit more and a little bit more, so it just kind of mirrors their natural environment a little bit better. All righty. So here are the examples, or actually first I'm going to tie it all back to functions of behavior. So like what we discussed earlier. So if we're looking at escape and avoidance, your child's in easily, like I can tell you right now, they're in escape avoidance. What are some things you can do for them? Some antecedent strategies you can do. You can help them when you're changing the schedule or routines. You can use those visual schedules for them, so if they know exactly what's required of them first before they get access to a break or reward. So using visual schedules, and then incorporating preferences. So they do not like to do homework assignments, but I mean, if you make it fun and engaging and include their preferences, maybe they will do it with you, right? You'll see a little bit more engagement and compliance for them. And then warning them when a transition is going to happen. So if they're engaging with their iPad, but in 10 minutes they have to go eat dinner, telling them, hey, in 10 minutes, we're going to put our iPad up and then we're going to start dinner, because that will work better than saying, hey, it's time to put your iPad up. Now let's go have dinner. You're going to see a little bit more non-compliance from them, because they don't want to, go have dinner. They want to stay on their iPad. So warning them ahead of time will definitely help. And then choice making, like I said, they don't want to do this assignment or this task at all. But if they have choices on how to get it done or where to get it done, you may see a little bit more engagement for them. And then using that first then language. First, we got to do this homework assignment, then you can have access to your iPad, so they know exactly what they're working for. Timers go a long way, and then breaking down the tasks. So this task is already non-preferred or it's already difficult for them. So let's break it down. Like, okay, first let's do these first 3 steps, and then you'll get a quick break. And then we'll come back and do the other 3 steps, and then you'll get another quick break. Or first let's do all these steps, and then you can have your iPad back. So breaking down that task into a smaller steps to really help them understand what needs to be completed of them can also help alleviate that stress or that frustration you'll see. Alrighty, so sensory automatic function. If your kiddo also has that sensory automatic function, what you could do is just enrich your environment with sensory stimuli, whether them having their security blanket, their comfort toys, their bears, the foam blocks, like I said, anything in their environment so that they can get that sensory output, that would definitely help them. All right. And then if your child's at a tangible function, like, oh, they will do anything for their iPad, if they'll do anything for their toy, what you could do is warning them when restriction of that item's about to happen. So if TV time is up at 9:30 p.m., you can time them or warn them, hey, bud, it's 9:20, in 10 minutes, we're going to turn off the TV. So warning them that restriction is about to occur. All right. And then choice making too. So this can mean by they have a choice as to which tangibles they have access to. So if they're working for it, they have a choice as to what they're working for. Because if you give them a choice of what they're working for, you'll get more engagement. Because if you give them, okay, you're working for ice cream, but they just had ice cream, the chances of them working for ice cream again may be minimal because they just had it, right? So giving them a choice as to what they're working for can also increase their engagement. And then using first then language. So first we're going to do this homework assignment, and then you can have, your Roblox back or whatever the case may be. Because like we said, we'll all know they'll work for something. We all work for something. So giving them that. And then if attention is that function, giving modeling to them how to complete that task, because that modeling and reviewing the expectations beforehand is giving them that free attention before they have to go out on their own and complete that task on their own. So if you just model to them, review the expectations, have them ask questions, things like that, provide that free attention, can definitely help. And then they transition to the task where they have to complete it by themselves and attention's restricted. So they already got access to your attention beforehand if you model or review this with them. All right, so these are just how to tie all these ABIs into the functions of behavior. And let's see. And in our ABA Visualized Guidebook, that is another guidebook that you guys are going to receive in your guys's packet that I'm going to mail out to you guys. If you look on page 51 and 52 of that, that will tell you exactly as well the functions and what ABIs to include. So you guys don't have to memorize this by memory. In your guidebook, it would definitely have this written out for you guys as well. All righty. So then let's move on. All right, so now I'm going to go to the examples and what they look like. Okay, so preferences. So this example, they had to complete that like connect the dot type activity. But let's say this person really liked Snow White. So they included Snow White into, the homework assignment. Like I said, if your child likes SpongeBob, including SpongeBob as like the characters of the word problem, just including their preferences. And then changing their schedules and routines. If you need to change it for some reason, use a visual schedule for them to use that so that they can visually see what's expected of them that day, and then in what order, that's coming. So using visual schedules. And then pre-activity interventions. So using a first then, you can use a first then language, or if you know they're a little bit more visual, they like visual support, you can use a first then board. So first we got to do these things first, and then you can have access to whatever you're wanting to work for. So really showing them exactly how to use that first then board. And then a timer. So this countdown timer, you guys are also getting this in your handbags as well. So this can be really good to use when you guys are priming them, warning them. This is a good timer because it visually shows them like when time is running out, that red will, slowly go to where there's no more red. All righty. And then choice making. So like I said, you guys are getting a choice board. So then choosing the reinforcers or choosing what they're working for, choosing how they want to, in what order they want to do their assignments in. First I want to do reading and then math and then science, or, first I want to clean my room and then I want to do homework, things like that. So offering them choices. And so you guys will get a choice board for rewards that they can work for. And this is what it looks like. All righty. And then changing the instructions. So if you need to change what that means essentially is if you need to change the instructions on how they're completing something, you can write out how they're going to complete those instructions with visual support. So you can tell them exactly how to write it out with like a little picture. So this one's washing dishes. So they need to wash dishes. So what we did is we broke it down for them step by step with a little visual support, with a little picture and how to complete that step. So that's another way on how to incorporate these instructions to them. So changing the delivery of that. And then enriching their environment. So like I said, having therapy balls, these squishy balls, foam, rocking chairs, anything that they love, definitely having that in their environment so that they can, get that sensory output out on their own. All righty. Okay, let's see. 45. So we got 15 more minutes. I'm just going to show you quick. These are very small snippets on how to use the timer and the choice boards, because I don't want to just give them to you guys and not really train you on how to use them. So these are just quick videos that my research assistant and I did so that we can show you guys how to use it. All righty. So let me actually stop my share so I make sure that I'm sharing with sound. All right. So you guys can still see the screen? Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead and play it.
And
All right, Aaliyah. Remember, we got to finish reading our book. So do you want to read the book in 3 minutes or in 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And once the timer goes up, remember, we got to finish our book. And then you can go ahead and play with the wand again, okay?
Okay.
All right, let me just play this other. Timer's up, so now we got to read. And remember, we're working for our spinner. All right. So you saw in this first video what I did several things. I offered a choice. Do you want to read your book in 5 minutes or in 3 minutes? Oh, sorry. She chose 5 minutes. Okay, great. I set the timer for 5 minutes. And then I told her, remember, we are working for our spinner. And then I put that on my I am working for strip, which you guys will also have get in your handbags. And so then once the timer was up, I made that transition of, okay, your timer is up. Remember, we're working for a spinner, but first we gotta finish reading. All right, so that's how to use the timer. Questions about that? All right. Timer. Let me go ahead and move on. So then this one's a choice board. So how to use a choice board. So let me pull up the volume. Go ahead and finish our math assignment. We got to complete all these math problems. So first, let's go ahead and choose what we're working for. So what are we working for? Here's your choice board. Ooh, fruit gummies. Awesome. All right. So first math assignment, then gummies. All right. Awesome job finishing your math assignment. And you got all the questions right. Good job. So now you get break with your gummies. All right, so as you saw in the first video, I explained to her first we got to do our math assignment, then we can have a quick break. So what are we working for? Here's your choice board. She made a choice. She was able to convert it from here to there. So that's something your child can do or you can do it for them. It doesn't matter. So she did it. And then we transitioned. Okay, great. So now you finished your math assignment. You got them all correct. Now you can have your gummies. So that's how we use that choice board. Questions on that? All right. Go ahead and finish our. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So in your handbag materials, like I said, for you guys participating and joining in today, I appreciate your time and effort. So there are materials that's going to be included. So the first one is that choice board that you saw in the video. So you guys will get that as well as with like little pictures of the like general reinforcers. So we have like cookies, we have pretzels, we have light up toys, we have gummies. So just general activities that our children typically request for, usually use. So you'll have that choice board and the I am working for strip in your handbag. And then you will also have the countdown timer that you saw in the video. So we will send you that as well. And then you're going to get a handout of the steps listed on how to use the choice board and the timer. So that handout really explains to you step by step on how to use both the choice board and the timer. And then you're going to get the ABA Visualize Guidebook. And that's a really cool tool to utilize that I love to give our parents and teachers because it shows all the strategies that I went over, but in step by step, and then also with pictures. So it's really cool, easy to read, and easy to, use if you're ever stuck. And like I said, it also goes over the functions of behaviors and how to tie any sort of strategies to each of those functions. And then last but not least, you're going to get a book. It's called The Verbal Behavior Approach. So this book was written by Mary Lynch, and she is actually a parent with a child with a disability. So she wrote it in a way that's an easy read for parents and caregivers or teachers, anyone for really to understand. So this book is really great. It just kind of talks about verbal behavior, how to enhance your child's behavior just based on a developmental level. So you guys will also get that book in your handbag. Alrighty. Well, that is all I have. Do you guys have any questions for me? Anything that I can answer? And I'm sorry, my video's still not working. I don't know what it is. So I apologize that you guys aren't seeing me, but I can still hope that you guys can hear me.
Thank you, Alexis, so much.
Yes, of
Um,
course. Thank you
I-
guys for
I have a question though. Do you also offer sessions or workshops for parents? Because I really like at the end how you gave examples of, working with your child and stuff, but so my child, I remember coming home after work and I was tired
Mhm.
and so my patience level, and have that much patience level with my child as maybe I should. And so
Mhm.
like in the video, you're super sweet and you have a lot of patience with, but maybe a session, do you offer sessions for parents of, when they're frustrated themselves and then having to work
Yeah,
with.
work through that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we do our telehealth sessions, like I said, it is parent implemented. So that's something you guys are interested in. That really gets that parent involved on how to apply these strategies with your child. But that unfortunately we're hoping to figure out if we get refunded. But right now it ends at the end of August. So that's something you're interested in, then I would definitely reach out as soon as possible. But if we do get refunding, then we'll be refunded for a year. But like I said, we don't know that yet. But that is one of our services. And then we do offer just trainings throughout the year and across the entire state of Texas. So those trainings we'll do virtual like this, like how you invited me to, or we'll also do in person. In person allows us just a little bit more opportunities to get a little bit more hands-on experience. So like you actually practicing these strategies and then us like physically being there to provide that support, that feedback, coaching and feedback. But as far as those two, I mean, we can definitely work with you, the parents. If you're in the Lubbock area, you guys can also come and receive our outpatient services, and that's directly focused on the child, but we do require parent training in those. So our outpatient services, we will require for you guys to come, whether that's twice a week for an hour, 30 minutes. And that's us really working with the parents or caregivers to teach you guys what we're doing, or just to answer, like you said, Monica, like any questions, like how do I work through this? Those parent trainings do offer, us to do that through our outpatient services or through our telehealth services.
And is it free?
So our telehealth services are, but like I said, that ends on the end of August. So our telehealth are, and then our outpatient services, we go through our insurance provider right now currently, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. We're trying to get other providers to provide those services, but as of right now, we do have to go for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then if not, if that doesn't also, you guys don't qualify for those, we definitely can still talk about services. It would just be more of like private pay.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry. I was gonna ask, Alexis, did you say you're based out of Lubbock?
Yes. So we are in actually Texas Tech. We're located on Texas Tech campus. So we are in the Lubbock.
Okay. So say like, I mean, I'm here in San Angelo. I work with the Stay Together program. So I work with a lot of kids that this material is very helpful. So I was wondering if we have a family that could, that you could work with, could we do a virtual like we are now?
Yes, it all depends. Like I said, they could come through our telehealth program, but that ends in the end of August. So it all just depends on how fast that can go. And so I would definitely say, I would say yes, but like I said, like it just all depends on how fast we can get them enrolled into our telehealth services so that they can receive that. But if not, if it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't come through and our services are up, if they're still wanting, help and stuff, we can look at private pay or them coming in and outpatient services.
I see. Otherwise, I mean, the material you have in the handbook, I can actually use that to help some of these families that are struggling with the disruptive behavior.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely use this with those families. And I will also send, Monica, if you don't mind, I can also send these slides to you, and then you can send them out to them. So I don't mind sharing these slides as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Did you say you were going to mail it or email?
Yeah, so I'm gonna mail out the resources. And then these slides, I can email them to Monica, and then she can email them to y'all, if that's okay with you, Monica.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? All right. Well, I do also have another survey. It's a brief survey. If you guys don't mind completing that, I did put the link also in the text box or in the chat. This just kind of helps us understand the quality of our services or the quality of the presentations we're providing you. So it gives us feedback on, like, things that we can work on in the future, things that we should continue to do. So I really appreciate any feedback you guys can offer me. So if you guys also don't mind completing this survey, and then I'll be done and I won't ask you guys to complete another survey. But yeah, and then there's my contact info. So if you have any other questions on how I can better serve you, your families, or the families you guys serve, feel free to reach out. There's my number and my email as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me.
I hope everybody has a good lunch. And I hope I'll probably see y'all later on this week, or if not, this afternoon is the Howard Community College session. And y'all enjoy. Have a good day, good Monday.
Bye.
Thank you.